Welcome to Hibiscus Children's Center. I'm Michael Waniger. I'm the President and CEO for Hibiscus Children's Center, and we have a really great program for you this morning. Essentially what we're going to do, as many of you may know, Hibiscus Children's Center is starting its 4th decade here on the Treasure Coast. 3 decades of helping children who've been abused, neglected, and abandoned. And many people may be aware of the fact that we have the residential shelter down in Martin County for the younger children and the village for the teenagers up. But many of you may not be aware of the fact that we have many programs that help the children through these very traumatic periods. My guest today is Carolyn Beal. Welcome.
Thank you.
Carolyn is the Director of Mental Health Services. And Caroline, I know you've been with us just a relatively short period of time, but if you could, please talk to us a little bit and tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, Michael, I've been in the field since 2007. I started off working with schizophrenics and chronic severe mental illness. From there, I went into domestic violence. I was actually working with the victims and the batterers down in Broward as well. And then I went into working with children and families in the dependency system as I was working on my master's degree at South University.
Okay.
I got my master's degree at South University, and then I started working for family preservation. So from then on, that's when I realized my passion was working with children and families, especially those that have been abused, neglected, and physical abuse.
Terrific. You said the passion, and I'm actually going to be finishing my first year this month as the President and CEO, although I've been sitting on the board here for several years. And I find that the common denominator. We're fortunate enough in this organization. We have 145 employees, both part-time, full-time, and over 350 volunteers here on the Treasure Coast. And again, as I said, the common denominator is that passion for children. I think this is really something that is unique. I know we have a lot of programs that work with the children. Again, but when I have the opportunity to go and speak to different groups and organizations, they understand that, yes, oh yeah, we know the history. We started in 1985, and Levon Tilton was the founder. In fact, I just finished doing a program last month with the Hibiscus children, which was the state of Hibiscus. And we started it off, and it's kind of interesting to reflect back a little bit. 1985, and I always start back, where were you? What were you doing? And in fact, I've got staff that wasn't even born then, to be honest with you. But 1985, I have a couple stats for people in the audience to maybe be aware of that. Actually, Ronald Reagan at age 73 was starting his 2nd term. I'll never forget, I'm a basketball fan. Villanova upset Georgetown in the NCAAs. A stamp was 22 cents. Amadeus won the movie of the year. And ironically enough, the Grammy Award winner was Tina Turner for the song, What's Love Got to Do With It?
Wow.
And little did we know then what we know now. Love had everything to do with it when it comes to Hibiscus Children's Center. And I'd like to, if you can, talk about some of the programs specifically. We can just take them maybe one by one so that the audience is aware of the programs that we're not just an orphanage, we're not just a boys' town, we're not just a residential shelter for children who've been abused and neglected. But the second part of our mission statement is through prevention programs, residential programs, shelter programs, and recovery programs. And I know that falls under your staff and some of the things. So if you could share with the audience a little bit, maybe one program at a time, and we can kind of understand a little bit more about Hibiscus and where it is today and where we're going in the future.
Okay, so I mean, as you know, we started off as a shelter, and from there, we realized that these kids needed to have some mental health services. So that's how our mental health services program came about. So we have community mental health outpatient services. We offer those services throughout the Treasure Coast and Okeechobee County. We also have a sexual abuse treatment program that we offer in all those counties as well. That program is very unique, and it's a specialized program. All the clinicians that provide services in that program are certified to do so. Many of them are licensed. So then we also have the behavioral health overlay services in both the shelter and the village. So those are also specialized services that we provide, our clinicians provide daily to those kids that live in the shelter and the village in those residential programs.
For novices like me who do not have the clinical background, you threw out a lot of terms there that I'm not sure I'm familiar with, although I'm going to play around a little bit. I do know a little bit about it, obviously, but what would be how do people who have their children who have been victimized through any of these programs, and I do know the sexual abuse treatment program is renowned throughout the state. I know we've received a lot of recognition on that. And unfortunately, one of the statistics that we're not very proud of in the state of Florida is that in today's world, the state of Florida is the third in human trafficking. We understand that. So there's absolutely a need today, probably more prevalent than maybe when Levon started this 30 years ago. So can you talk a little specifically about the sexual abuse treatment program and how we help children get through some horrific situations?
Okay, well, Hibiscus, we are contracted with the Department of Health, and they oversee our sexual abuse treatment program. We receive grants and funding through them. Each year they come and they monitor our program to make sure that we are following all the protocols and delivering services as faithfully as they would like. So we are the #1 participant in that program, so and we are in full compliance every year. In that program, we provide therapy to clients who have been sexually abused. They are victims of sexual abuse, and they go through the program, which is about 6 to 12 months. And we use a trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy approach to get the best outcomes. Most of those clients have PTSD symptoms, depression, anxiety. So our goal is to reduce those symptoms and return them back to their previous functioning and to heal the family.
Okay. Now, I understand your main office is here in St. Lucie County, right in Fort Pierce, but you also have staff that go throughout the Treasure Coast, in Okeechobee, down at the shelter, I believe down in Jensen Beach, up in the village, up in Vero Beach. And how large is your staff? Because that's a pretty widespread geography.
In Okeechobee County, we have a licensed mental health counselor, and we have 2 master's level clinicians that are full-time, and they're registered interns with the state of Florida, so they're license eligible.
Okay.
We also have 1 part-time staff out in Okeechobee. In Martin County, we have a full-time staff who's license eligible at the shelter, the residential program. And then we have an art therapist who works in Martin County part-time. We also have 5 full-time staff in Fort Pierce, St. Lucie area.
Okay.
Okay, who are all license eligible. In Indian River, we have a licensed staff, and then we have 3 license eligible clinicians who work at the village, the residential program there.
So it's one of the most professional, thorough staffs, and I know you threw a lot of terminologies at me again. I do not have that scientific background, but I understand and appreciate it. I know one of the other programs that we work with is the Infant Mental Health Services. Can you tell me a little bit more about that in our audience as well?
With the Infant Mental Health Program, the clinicians who provide services to those clients and their parents, they have to be trained in that program where they're working with infants and their parents to address whatever symptoms that are occurring. Mostly it's children that are abused, neglected, taken from their parents, but we're trying to get them maybe adopted or reunified with the family if that's appropriate. So you're just not working just with the kids, the infants, you're working with the parents too, or the caregiver.
And how do the children come into the Hibiscus world, if you will? I mean, how are they referred to? Or, I mean, is it families? Is it neighbors? Is it, how do we recognize that? And then obviously they come in for diagnostic qualifications to find out where they are and what they need. And I know you have Dr. Prado as an example is a full-time at the Fort Pierce location. So I'm just curious if anybody needs or has a desire to understand how the children come to us. How does that work?
Well, with Hibiscus, what makes us unique is that we take mostly victims of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment. That's really our mission statement. So we get referrals for kids that are usually victims and their families. You know, they come in and we do an assessment and we make our recommendations. Also, we have an on-site psychiatrist, Dr. Prado, who can see the children to assess the need for medication management. So most of our referrals do come through the community, the local CBC, case managers, even you know, community-based referrals, just people coming, like, walking in. So, and then it's at our residential programs, those are with, you know, they're coming from the state, you know, they're being removed, so.
As this president CEO of the organization, I'm in all 4 counties, and I can tell you firsthand, I walk into a lot of the different facilities that we have throughout the Treasure Coast and Okeechobee, and you're doing phenomenal work. I can see the passion, the clinicians, these children coming in, and in many cases, most cases, in fact, I would say all cases, not through any fault of their own, but they've been victimized, and they really need something to happen that we can help in this community. And one of the things I shared at the State of Hibiscus is that really our hope and our dream is, even after, as we begin our 4th decade here on the Treasure Coast, is we become the agency that all other agencies want to emulate. And by that, and why shouldn't we be? As I've said many, many times, we have the greatest cause with the children. We have a great staff, as we just heard about, and it continues to get better. And we have tremendous volunteers and support from the community. Again, how does somebody who's out there listening say, how do I get involved? Actually, we will have the website on the screen here. But the whole concept of philanthropy, to be candid with you, has changed. 3 decades ago, a lot of people would say, you know, Michael, here's a check. Let's go have a cold drink or something to that effect. Today, the fundraising portion of it, which, and again, I have to share with people out there in the audience, we just started our fiscal year July 1, so it goes to June 30th. So what happens is that every year we need to raise $2.5 million to keep solvent, to be able to fund the programs that we're doing and doing the wonderful, miraculous work that you and your clinicians are doing, as well as for the shelter and the residents. So we have a number of activities. I'm going to talk a little bit later in the program about some of the things that are happening here in St. Lucie. They're fun events for the audience to participate, but fully understanding that their dollars are going in to fund the programs that we're just talking about right now. I think that's really critical. We're a unique, and you said what makes Hibiscus unique is because of the programs that we do. We have people from all over the country. I know we have a program called the Strengthening Families program here in St. Lucie County that's been recognized as #1 throughout the country. People come here to watch the program, to see what's happening. Could you speak a little bit about that? Because that's kind of the prevention aspect before the children really get in here, is it not?
Yes. That program is unique in itself because that person who's working with, they're working with the entire family. They're going to be participating in group counseling as well as family counseling, individual counseling, and they're really just trying to get the family system back to where it needs to be, and essentially to strengthen the family. So it's about a 12 to 24 week course, okay, and they get resources, and they have a great succession rate.
So if somebody's out there, and again, there's been a lot of difficulty the last several years with the economy, people have lost jobs. I mean, life being life. In many cases, just difficult things that happen to people, and they find out that maybe they're part of a family, or their family is maybe not down in that crisis mode yet, but certainly they're heading that direction, you know, whether it be the spousals or the children, or they're out of control. How do they sit there and reach out? How do they get eligible? Do they just call the Hibiscus hotline, or do they get a hold of you? Or if I'm in a family, or if, let's say, I have my daughter and her husband and have grandkids, and we understand things are not going to, they're not to the crisis level yet, but certainly they're going down that slippery slope. How can I get them help?
Well, we are partners with a lot of other community agencies. So we get referrals based on those other agencies as well. So anyone could call Hibiscus, and if they are stating what they need, then we could find the appropriate program for them, whether it be counseling or strengthening families or supporting families in crisis, to provide resources. So anyone could call, and we're going to help anyone who's in need just by directing them to the appropriate program.
It's got to be a very challenging, very difficult job. There's no question about it. But I also know it can be very, very rewarding. And I know we were talking a little bit off camera before we came on this morning to the fact that we do have several success stories. And unfortunately, with most people, with any job or occupation, you go to the problem, you solve the problem, you go to the next problem. But I think it's important maybe to share with the audience as well. Do you think of one or two success stories that we could share, that this is what Hibiscus is all about, and this is, many people say, well, we want to be successful. Well, what does success look like for Hibiscus?
Well, it's funny because people, when they find out what you do, they always say, well, at least if you help 1 out of 100, you feel good, and that's a reward. But honestly, we want to help every kid, okay? We want every kid to have a success story, and we know that that's not always reality, but since from the time I've been at Hibiscus, I've seen a few. There was one client who he was living at the Village, a residential program. He was there for 2 years. He had been removed from his parents, and their rights were terminated, so he couldn't be placed anywhere else. There was no other relatives or anything, but being at Hibiscus for those 2 years, he really grew. Okay, at first he was just defiant or just having some issues, which is normal for kids when that happens to them. But he actually stayed there for 2 years, graduated high school, and once he turned 18, he moved up to Orlando, and he's in a different placement, like a transitional housing. So he's doing well, and he reports back to the staff all the time, and he's doing well. So I would consider him a success story because he actually made it through and graduated high school, and took that opportunity to change his life. He even he even spoke to the other kids before he left the program and told them, I used to be just like you, but I changed my life, and you guys should get on this side too. So
I know the young man you're speaking about, and I've had the opportunity to personally sit down with him and talk and listen. I think many times these children just need to be somebody to listen to them and kind of guide them, and he has been a real success story. Again, as I mentioned, last month we did the State of Hibiscus, and for those of you who did not have the opportunity, and this is offered to the 4 counties really to kind of learn more about it and how you can participate and volunteer, and either through your financially or your time or whatever it might happen to be. We had 2 other graduates, and I do remember, and obviously we can't call them by name, but one, the state of Florida just passed a transitional living law this year that allowed us to go from 18 to 21. Before it was 18, they had to age out. We have a young man who's up in Vero Beach at the same village, and he's really kind of been the role model. And I remember things that kind of touched my heart a little bit. He had some difficulties, family difficulties. He had a younger brother, a lot of things that were happening to him, but did really well. And he said, I did the best of my whole life when I was at the Hibiscus village. And he says, I'm going to be 18. I know this law just passed. What's the opportunity I can stay and really function here? And we went through and we made changes, and we went to the state, and we got licensed to be able to do that. And it's really been a great role model for some of the other children who also sit there and feel that, of all the things that have happened to me in my life, this has really been the most rewarding. I've seen myself grow. Another young lady that was also at our State of Hibiscus told her story, and I think this is remarkable. She was brought to us as a young girl down at the shelter down in Jensen Beach, and she did very well, aged out, because again, after 12 years old, they go to the village where the teenagers are. Right. Worked really well with staff, fantastic young lady, graduated from Vero Beach High School, is going to college up in Gainesville, and today is sitting as a mentor for a couple of the young ladies at the village because she's been through it. And she told the story how when she graduated from high school, she didn't think it was all that great. But again, some of the volunteers and guild members actually bought her high school ring. And it was very emotional. I mean, there were tears. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience when we went through this stuff. And I think this is really one of the things that the Treasure Coast can be extremely proud of, is that we do have organizations such as Hibiscus. And I know everybody, we all compete today for everything, but people want to know when they write that check, where's my money going? I mean, how is it being spent? Because this is really important for them when they move on. As I mentioned, we're going to have some events coming up here in St. Lucie County, if I can talk just very briefly. October 19th, coming up right away here, is a unique program that sounds like a lot of fun. It's called the Spoil Island Scavenger Hunt. And I know Veronica, who's her and the guild here in St. Lucie County under the president's Mike Henry, are doing a program with their boats and working actually with the Department of Environmental Protection, cleaning up islands, going to different islands, going to be a scavenger hunt, going to be a big party, all these types of things that'll happen. But the proceeds, again, go back to Hibiscus. There's a Halloween party going to happen at Tutti Fresco, who's been a great supporter of ours throughout the last couple of years. We have a golf tournament on December the 6th at St. James, another wonderful community partner, and that's what it becomes. This will be the thing that you're talking about with partners all the way through. So these types of events, and again, all of these events are on our website, and again, that will be coming up on the screen. But we need to let you all know that this is what we do, other than just taking care of children. And I think it's really been very gratifying for me. I know we've had a lot of changes this first year. I look back on it, oh my gosh, we went through a whole strategic plan to address the needs of Hibiscus. Because again, as we begin our 4th decade, the needs of Hibiscus today, being proactive, are much different than they were 10, 15, 20, even 30 years ago. So we need to be somewhat visionary. What's going to be the demands? And again, what can we do best as a community to take care of these children? And obviously the mental health services aspects just really started a couple of years ago. I mean, again, we have to sit there for any types of problem solving. I think the first thing is to understand what problem identification is. And I know we've talked a little bit about the programs, but if somebody wants to come in and become a volunteer, can help, or when you're out in the community, I know people, like you said, they hear the Hibiscus name. What's the biggest question you get asked all the time from people? Tell us about what we really are doing in the community.
I would say the biggest question is, like I was saying before, like, wow, that must be a lot of hard work, dealing with like those issues that these kids are facing, and and actually people usually praise you, like, wow, you do good work, and they're pretty appreciative about it.
How do you keep your mental health status healthy? I guess because you're dealing with all these many of these traumatized children, and then the families. I mean, it's a lot of these stories have to be heartbreaking, and fully understanding that maybe some of these children are never ever going to have what is going to be known as a normal life. How do you and your staff kind of cope with that a little bit?
Well, me and my staff, we engage in a lot of self-care practices. I mean, that is very important. So it's a lot of just self-care practices like exercise, relaxation, even talking with your colleagues, providing some type of support that way, just talking about the cases themselves and the clients, and sometimes it's even, you'd have to refer out, like the families too, for them to get support as well if they're the caregiver, not just, they're not the parent, and they need support as well, because what they're dealing with is something that they've never seen before, and getting them education on how to understand that some of the kids' behaviors is not their symptoms. It's not it's not like who they are. It's just what they've been through is the reason why they're displaying those behaviors.
I can kind of relate that on a different spectrum. For about six and a half years, I had to take care of my mother, who went through the different stages of Alzheimer's. And again, you kind of go, wow, does anybody understand that? And you go through the different stages. That, like I said, I saw the paranoia, the memory loss, the hygiene issues, the wandering, and so forth. And it really is important that you have that support staff, I guess, to really understand that and really cope, because I was even advised that 63% of the caregivers really they expire before the person you're taking care of.
Right.
And
yeah. The question is, who is caring for the caregiver?
Well, and that's part of that's what I would think the Strengthening Families in Crisis can also help as well. I do know that we are planning to have another state of Hibiscus, and we're planning to, date hasn't been established yet, but sometime in January. And again, because we had this in June, and many of our community, our neighbors, they go elsewhere, up north and different places to that effect. But what we want to do in January is basically bring you back some of your staff, some of the programs, and we're going to have again, this was at IRSC, who's been a terrific partner of us. They host this. We had 200-300 people. I would expect we'll have 400 or 500 people the next time. We've invited the governor. We invited all the dignitaries, because it's important that they get behind the programs and see the success stories, because unfortunately you pick up the newspaper today and it's always negative. If there is a good story, unfortunately it's buried somewhere between the obituaries and the comics, if you can find them at all. And the plan that we really want to do is sit there and educate the community on what is happening with Hibiscus. And specifically, I think they know about the historical aspects from when LaVon Tilton started her dream. And I had the opportunity of spending some time with her in Martin County this weekend. We did a music festival down there, which was terrific. It was like when I was a child, you had from the 80-year-olds to the 18-month-olds running around, enjoying life, and really being the family center itself. So we will have that on our website once the dates have been determined, talking about the programs that we're really looking at. So I really want to thank you this morning for sharing a little bit, educating myself. Every time I talk with you, I learn something in addition, so I know that the audience out there is doing that as well. Again, for those of you in the audience, please, I ask you to sit there and seek out Hibiscus Children's Center. I mean, be proud that you're in a community that has an organization like this that is doing so many wonderful things for children due to people like Caroline and her staff. I mean, these are things that are different and are unique. And again, another reason why you should have pride in St. Lucie County and the Treasure Coast. Hibiscus Children's Center has rewarded me in ways that I never thought I'd ever have. Never thought I'd be in this position. Never thought I would follow this after my career. But it's really been probably the most rewarding thing. As I've always shared with people, everything in life prepares you for what you're about to do. So all of us go through this. We're all brothers and sisters, and we need to take care of each other. So at this, I would like to say thank you, Caroline, again, and thank you in the audience, and give us a call. Look us up. Thank you very much.